I think we need to understand that it's business,
Yeah.
right? If that's the first thing.
Yeah.
We're not there to make friends. We're not there to keep everyone happy. That's not possible, practically speaking.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrews. I'm a host for the Shaft podcast. And on this episode, we'll be having a very important conversation around youth, our participation in the economy, how we are able to find meaningful growth, access to jobs. Because youth unemployment has become a big thing in the world today, with the intense competition that we face with higher expectations, higher productivity levels, the rise of also AI that we as humans have to compete with. It means that as young people, we always have a higher expectation that keeps on growing, and we need to find a way to adjust to it. What this is leading to is us facing much more significant challenges in the corporate experience, the corporate world. We have to find ways and means to understand exactly what is expected of us and how to deal with it. In this episode, I'm here with Ali Zaryab, who is the country manager for Boat Food, most recently become a general manager at Boat Ghana. And he has a wealth of experience in corporate management, also because he has himself risen through the ranks a lot at various corporations, and he's here with me to discuss the issues around the youth, our participation in the corporate structure, and how best we can make use of the opportunities that we have. Ali, you're welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Andrews, for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because I'm sure people would want to know such a wonderful personality that we've got here today.
Well, there's not little. I think I will have a lot of things to talk about myself. So I'm originally from Pakistan, and I moved to Ghana back in 2018.
Wow.
So I've completed an entire 6 years now.
Ooh.
So I moved into July 2018, and ever since I've been here, Ghana is my country. So
That's
I've been living
amazing.
over here, enjoying over
Yeah.
here. My family is over here with me too, and my kids are going to the school.
Oh,
So it's been a wonderful journey.
yeah.
And if I recall about my own experience, I started off working back in 2007,
Ooh,
as
that's
a
a
call
long time
center.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a call center agent, I
Wow.
joined. And I started moving up the ladder from being a call center agent to a team lead, having a team of about 15, 20 people. Then
Wow.
from there, I started moving into looking after our outsourcing operation. That's where
Yeah.
I had a major exposure to uh, handling complex business.
Okay.
Because the company where I used to work was one of the biggest, second biggest telecom in Pakistan.
Oh,
So we had outsourced our business to another company, and we were taking care of our business while someone else was running our show. So I was managing a business which had almost a call center of 350 people.
That's a lot.
And that was a great experience that I learned
Yeah.
how to deal with people, process, technology, and everything. And then from there, I spent almost 3.5 years there. And from there, I started moving into strategy and projects team because I had been into operations and front side. So I realized that I need to learn a different side of
The business.
business.
Yeah.
So I moved into strategy and projects team. And that's where I realized that I shouldn't be saying this thing, but I was really good in my operations. I was one of the
Yeah.
top performers. But when I moved into strategy and projects team,
Yeah.
I realized I know nothing about projects. I know nothing about how a strategy is created.
Yeah.
So, and I used to think that I would do an amazing job because when I moved there. But what happened in the first couple of months, I realized that
Yeah.
there's a lot that I need to learn.
Yeah.
So I went back, and I think YouTube was my teacher at that time.
Wow.
So I started learning, I started going online, started picking out books as to how to create a scope document, how
Yeah.
to create stakeholder documents so
Yeah.
that I understand how project management works.
Yeah.
And then strategy also. So that's where, I realized that, despite the fact you're developing, growing in your organization and your career and your professional life, still there's a lot
So
of room
much
for
more
you
to
to
learn.
learn.
Yeah.
So I shifted gears. I started learning a lot. I became one of my best project managers in my company. I'm pretty sure people have rated me really high, and whoever I've worked with.
Yeah.
And that's where I also went into going after the project management PMP certifications too.
Yeah.
So I set myself up a goal that I need to go for this professional certification.
Yeah.
And then once I did my PMP, I went into chasing a Prince 2 certification. So I did my Prince 2. And I think in 2016, I was fortunate enough to join another stream of product management.
Okay.
That's where we were working with GSMA, and part of there was this global project which was going on. There were 2 countries from Africa, 4 countries from Asia were part of that of the major project that we were running with GSMA.
Yeah.
And again, I realized that there's a lot that I need to learn about product management, how a product is created, how you refine it, how you gather user feedback, how you develop a user feedback from a farmer who doesn't know anything about technology, but then you're converting that into something meaningful.
Wow.
So I worked there for 2 years, and that's where, and when I got exposed to that role, I realized that there's a lot of things happening beyond major bigger organization like an MNO. There are multiple startups. That's where I start getting exposed to startups. So fortunately, I moved into another startup called Recult. It was a startup founded by MIT graduates. They were based in US, Thailand, and in Pakistan. So I moved from an organization which had more than 3,000 employees into an organization, and 3,000 employees, by the way, in just one country.
Wow.
And from there, I moved into an organization which had 29 employees across US, Thailand, and Pakistan.
Yeah.
And that's where, when I started working there, I realized that it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Because, when you're working for a bigger organization, there are systems, there are already different processes, policies in place. But when you're working for a startup, you are making everything. So you're working on Google Sheets and you're learning, okay, how to put in data, and then with limited resources, how to get the max out of the business. So I just stayed there for 6 months, and that's where I came across this opportunity of moving to Ghana. So I moved here, one of the largest online marketplaces, Thonathon.com, at that point in time. So I joined them as a business head for e-commerce, marketplace, and then jobs vertical.
Okay.
And that was something where I left my family back home. I came over here, and it was a big leap.
Yeah, big
And
step.
there are times in life when you say that, okay, I'm going to take a risk,
Yeah.
and I'll take a biggest risk of my life. And I think that movement was one of the risks that I took, and I think it really paid out well. Hasn't been a single day where I have regretted coming to Ghana. And when I started working in Thonathon, I realized that I need to learn a lot beyond my professional side. I need to learn how to deal with a new culture, how to understand even the roads as well. Google was my friend at that time. How to go about finding groceries, going for shopping, going to different places. So fortunately, I had really good friends and family members over here who really helped me out. I mean, I would call them not family, but they became my family. So I worked there for 3 years, and then since May 2021, I moved into Bolt as country manager. So yeah, it has been an exciting journey. So almost, I think, I covered 17 years of my professional career.
That's just like such a long time.
Yeah.
Because I look at myself and starting like 1-2 years into professional life, and you're like, oh, this has been 17.
Yeah.
That's such, because we look at it today and we're like, we are probably tired, but to have the energy to go as long as you have been, and the progress and the experience, it's like something to aspire to as well.
It's an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
And I think there are a few fundamental things that I strongly believe in, that learning that never stops. Regardless of your level in an organization, regardless of what there's always new to learn. There's always new something. It's you're within. You need to have that fire within yourself to continue to grow. And yesterday there was a colleague of ours was saying that Ali, right now, uh, bowl food in Ghana is the biggest. You don't have a major competition in place. But then I told him that no, we need to compete with ourselves. If we don't have a major competition, that doesn't mean that we should be at rest or we should be relaxed or we shouldn't be pushing ourselves to, because we are meeting customers' expectation, which is growing every single day. So we need to make sure that our services are growing. We need to make sure that we are uplifting the standard, living up to the expectation for every single order that we cater. So challenging yourself is one thing which I also find very, it's the motivation that comes within. Why do you wake up every morning? So I think these are the few basic things which is there. Never get into your comfort zone. If once you start getting into your comfort zone, that's where you should be extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's where there are like few things which I always keep in mind, that anytime you start going into your comfort zone,
Yeah.
that's where you need to change
Yeah.
or get a new role or talk to your line managers that, okay, give me a new challenge.
Yeah, that is fascinating as well because for most of people who don't know this, Ali was the first country manager or the first top manager I worked under. In my professional journey, I worked as an intern at Boat Food for a year or almost a year, and Ali was my country manager. I had a direct manager, Jennifer, as well. And I would always say that working under you and setting the tone for my professional career was probably one of the best jackpot hits I've had, because it defined for me what leadership should look like, but also it changed my perception a lot. And I think I've said this a couple of times to you that the very first time we had a conversation, the statement you told me, which was after I joined, the very first time we had a one-on-one meeting, you told me you don't hire for the knowledge that people have learned, because a lot of the things that are taught in our schools, you barely apply them in the professional work that you do. And so you hire people mainly for character, for the resilience that they are showing and their hunger to learn. And I want to believe that those are things that you've come to conclude based on your years of experience. And so what I want to know is, as young professionals going into the professional space, is this a mindset that you would encourage of us, that we should focus more on building our character traits that would stand the test of time regardless of the environment we find ourselves in, as opposed to just focus on we want to be great academics and get the grades, and that is what will land us a better job?
I think you need to. So first of all, I really appreciate, and that's something which I keep on telling people, that your attitude plays a very key role, but only behavior cannot work. You need to know how to strike a balance between learning the skills while improving your soft skills too. And that's something which is an ongoing thing. You will be working with so many people. Some people are very hard to deal and work with. Some people are easy to work with. Some people, they know how to strike a balance between a carrot and stick rule, where you need to take out the carrot and then where you need to take out stick to get things done. But when it comes to young professional, yes, being good in academics is extremely important, because that takes you to good places, that takes you to good universities, which gives you top-notch education. And of course, that value that you learn at school and universities and colleges, nobody can replace that. When you come into the professional world, of course, there are shocks, and where you start thinking that, okay, I've learned this thing, where am I using that? There are times when you get into an organization and you start working on Excel. And you probably will start thinking that, why have I not learned Microsoft Excel to the level I should have learned? Excel is whole itself is a whole world of sheets and formulas and everything, where you need
complex.
It's too complex. But even if I recall my graduate time, I used to hate Excel. The only plus minus formulas are okay. We were and playing with the font size, but then there's a whole lot of things that you can learn. So you cannot succeed in an organization without having good education, because that's a stepping stone. It's laying the foundation. One of the things that I learned back in my experience is, you can start growing, but then if your basics are not right, then the building will collapse. So you need to make sure that there is a solid foundation in place on which you can start building up your career or anything. So soft skills is very important. How you deal with your colleagues, with your stakeholders, with your management, even with your team members, even with your peers, even people, because then you're representing an organization. So you, when you speak to somebody on an organization behalf, you need to have those right skills, set of skills to make sure that you are impacting the other person by your professionalism. But you also need to know what you're doing. There are some core fields, for example, finance, marketing. You cannot get into these things without having the right set of knowledge, without understanding things properly from A to Z, how these things they work. So I think these are, it's a combination. I can't say that, okay, only one thing will work. But if you're really good at work, but if you're not good at presenting your work, that's also takes you down. You need to strike a balance. So, for example, if you're going for a presentation, rehearse that in your mind. Rehearse that by standing in front of maybe a mirror to understand how you are progressing. I'll give you an example. When I used to work in my very first job, which I started right during my graduate, when I was doing my undergraduate. So I started working in a call center where we were sitting in Pakistan. It was an outsourced call center. So, and we used to work as, so, you know, the concept of BPOs, where somebody in US would call someone and somebody in Asia would pick up the phone. So my name was Brian at that time. So I would pick up the call. I would say, thank you for calling. This is Brian. How can I help you? But we were working with so many companies. So we even had to remember. So what I used to do at that point in time, so I'm emphasizing on the importance of practice. When I used to go to work, when I used to come back, I used to rehearse while I was driving my bike, so that my brain starts automatically functioning in the way that I'm doing something and I'm handling business of other, because I was representing that organization. And if I mess up at that point in time, that customer would not be happy. So that's where, you know, continuous skill development is extremely important, and soft skill side, you cannot ignore that.
I mean, one fascinating question I've always been meaning to ask is, there's been this recent trend that because there are so many educated people around, corporate hiring processes have started to gradually devalue academic records in favor of other additional experiences. So in school, we are told, look, your grades are not enough anymore. There are so many first-class students who are home unemployed. And so you need to do something more than just be a first-class student or be a good academic student. I don't know, for your experience doing several hirings over the years, whether that has come to be true or that is just being misrepresented as to how the hiring processes have evolved to become.
It depends. There are times when, for example, you as one example, we hired you, you were straight from school, but you were doing other things on the side, right? So you were part of debates, you were training students. So it's not just, I would say, because look, to be honest with you, there's a lot of competition out there. Right now, even when we advertise a position, we get hundreds of CVs from people who are experienced, but they're not happy where they're working, or they are currently not working even after working for a couple of years. There are fresh graduates as well who are coming straight from school, and then there are the ones who are in between them. They are from school, but they then started working on something for themselves, and then they are looking for a job. So you're competing with them. The first thing that, you know, we need to understand as graduates, the first thing that, for example, when you apply for a job is, I don't believe in applying for every single job which is out there.
Okay.
You need to know that, okay, I go through the requirement, first see whether do I match, or am I passionate about this thing. Maybe you can do a doing sales job, but you're more passionate about something else and you want to move in that direction. First, understand whether the requirements are there. The other thing which I would see, or maybe even before I would get to see, or I'll tell you my own example, you're going through the CV. CV is the first thing which is representing you. Unfortunately, I have seen CVs where I probably would look at it and I realize, oh, This is something that needs to be taught in universities now, how to create your CV. And I don't think that we are at a point in time where we are interested in knowing that whether you are married or not, and which year you were born in, and what's your nationality right now, unless we specify. But for junior roles, we know that, okay, we will be asking these questions in your interview. What we just need to know is, for example, what's your email address, what's your telephone number, how we can reach you, right? So that's something which is there. Utilize that space. I've seen people who have little to no experience, but they are making 3-page long CV. Trust me, the kind of pressure and the kind of competition which is out there, recruiters don't even have the time to go through 3-page CV for a very entry level role.
Yeah.
Keep it precise, highlight. And we all know that, okay, if you're working in a sales role or sales assistant, or you're working as a customer services, or you're working as a product assistant or any marketing assistant, there are highlights of, we know that what people do. You can just explain in 1 to 2 lines that this is what I do in my role, but explain what you have done.
Yeah.
That's where it will set you apart from what people have been doing. So, for example, I'll give you one example from my experience when I was a call center agent. Just like think of it as somebody sitting in MTN call center or Airtel or Aircel now? Airtel, yeah.
Yeah.
So any call center in anywhere, and you're calling as a customer, somebody is responding back to your queries. There could be some processes, there could be some systems that needs improvement.
Yeah.
So when I was a call center agent, when I used to get a couple of calls on a similar issue where customers are complaining about the same thing, or customers are telling something about the same thing, repeating, I would reach out, I would send out an email to my system and processes team. And this is something I remember back in 2007-8 when I started off, that this is something which we are doing. If we change it this way, this will improve the process. Okay. Or this is something where customers are complaining about. Are we aware of this issue, or should we do? So this was me, one of hundreds of agents who were sitting there, and a lot of people who were doing the same things. That's where you start highlighting them. Because I remember there was one point in time, there was someone from that team actually said that, Ali, we really appreciate the way you send out emails to us and ask us to improve certain things, or you ask question during huddles and help us to improve. And then similarly, there were other who were also doing the same thing. That's how you start creating some difference. Although it's a small thing that you've gotten a process change or a process improvement, but that process improvement is impacting thousands of customers or millions of customers who are using your services. And that, if that goes into your CV, that I helped improve my process that affected the life of 2,000 customers, that's something I'm willing to see. I would want to see that, okay, this person is capable of making changes. This person is capable of learning, identifying problem, then finding solution to that problem. So that's also very important. So when you start off with your CV, make sure that you are doing it. If let's say you're a fresh person from college, what have you achieved in college? What projects have you worked on? And then you also need to keep yourself updated with market knowledge. What's going on? When we started off, you just said in the introduction that AI is there. Now we have to compete with AI. What's happening in AI?
Yeah.
There's a lot that I need to learn too. What's happening in AI? Because it's such a big thing. So if you're not, at least start getting the knowledge of these skill sets. Start talking to your friends who are working in organization that, okay, what should I do to develop? There's one thing which even I think we all need to do a lot more is taking some mentorship. Taking guidance from people who have been working. Maybe your family members, maybe your own family, immediate family members like your parents. They have been working, if they're working in an organization. So they can tell you so many things. Even if they're not working in an organization, they deal with people. They, in pretty much every single place they go, they have tons of experience which they can share with you. So I think these are like basic things that you need to differentiate yourself from others.
It's really true, because I remember when I don't know if you know this, but I first applied to Bolt Ride Hailing for my internship, and then I went for the interview. At that time, my CV was about 5 pages, very, very long, a lot of unnecessary explanations on there. And then after the interview, from Bolt Ride Hailing operations reached out and told me, look, I liked your experience, I liked your confidence, but your CV is too long for someone who is a fresh graduate. This is what you need to do. And she gave me very detailed feedback from there. And I picked that and restructured my CV and then applied for the Bold Food Operations intern when it opened up. And then that's when I got in.
Andres, you pointed out to a very important thing, that feedback. Start taking feedback about everything, and take that feedback in a constructive way. There are people that I've seen that if you give them feedback, they get offended. That why are you telling me this thing, or why are you telling me a very petty thing? The thing is, all these things, if you're not taking your feedback in a constructive way, you will mess up. If I give you an example of 2009-10, I joined this outsourcing unit. My boss has been the one that I have an amazing respect for. He has taught me so many things. So when we started working, I joined after 8-9 year. Our annual review came in, and I went in with. I used to carry copy at that point in time. That okay, I'll be noting down things. That was a habit of mine. That I would, even in meetings, I will note down the things. So I went into my the room where I was supposed to meet him with a very clear mind that we have done amazing, and I'm the guy who has performed it very well, so I'm going to get a lot of appreciation. When I got into the room, I got to know within 5 minutes that no, there was a lot that I could have done, or I was wrong, or my approach were not right about going certain thing. And I remember telling my boss that, do you mind if I start noting down everything, whatever you are saying, so that I can go back and work on it? I came out of the room, I remember, I think I'd written like 3-4 pages of the feedback of the things that he was mentioning, that this is what you get. And you need to understand one thing, that more importantly is you take that feedback in a positive way. So I started noting down these things. I went back to him the next year. I went back to him, and I knew that my feedback is going to change. And at that point in time, I could reflect my entire year, and then I could reflect that first meeting, because the second meeting was completely different. He told me all the good things that I've done. And I think if he had not guided me right as a mentor, as my boss, or as my someone who I look up to, I probably would not have improved a lot of things in my own way of work. So I think feedback, just like you said, it's very important to take it in a positive way, go back, reflect on it, see how are you going to go about that so that you can improve. So the end objective is you improve yourself, and that's why if you brought it down from a 5 page CV to 1 page, so this means there was a lot of things which were not required. Yeah, as an individual, but maybe another person would like to know a summary of your experience.
I think that's also very, very valuable, not just for the person, but also because the way I see feedback is when I got to learn that, I also get to teach people who are around me, my friends, who are applying for things. They come around and say, oh, have a look at my CV. Then I pick that feedback that I got on my CV and go like, oh, you can take this out. You can limit it to 1 page. Make sure that you keep these key details there so it's easier for people to review. And I think there's one thing I also got to know, that these days a lot of corporations use automated systems to sift through CVs because of the large pile of applications that they bring in. And they have certain requirements that automatically, if your CV is not prim and proper, you are just going to get out within that first review stage of automated processes before it even gets to the person. So you might be a great candidate, you might have all the good experiences, but because your CV is not structured properly, you don't even get to the hiring manager's desk to be viewed as a person, to know exactly what your experiences are. So it's a very important thing that has become probably the differentiation factor for a lot of people in the modern day.
It's extremely important, because the way things are changing, technology has disrupted everything. And yes, there are ADS, application tracking systems, which are in place. They will pick up that these are the things that I need to pick up. If your CV doesn't have, that's where I said in the beginning, understand what are the requirement. If your CV has that requirement, match. Unfortunately, what happens, some people would, for example, they'll reach out to me on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and simply say, do you have anything for me, or can you help me get into a role? The
Yeah.
thing is, I can always refer you
Yeah.
to someone
Yeah.
that, okay, this person is strong. But if I don't know you,
Yeah.
I would not be able to identify your strength.
Yeah.
I have never worked with you. You're
Yeah.
someone sitting in some part of the world and you're expecting another person to help. And I think I'm pretty sure this goes with everyone.
Yeah.
That if somebody is reaching out to you, if you're not going to tell me that this is the role that I am strongly qualified,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Because these are the things that I've done in my past. These are the things that match with the requirement, and that's where I feel I am a very strong candidate.
Okay.
At least you have summarized that years of experience in
Yeah.
a very concise way, so
Yeah.
that I can then, it helps me to share it.
Yeah.
So similarly, even if your CV is very long, I may not have the time to go through.
Yeah.
And for example, I may find your CV very interesting in your first page, but what
Yeah.
if in second page you have done something which is not of my interest, or
Yeah.
which where something I feel, okay, this is something I really need to look into, or should I be calling this person? Or probably I'll start thinking he has written so many things about himself or herself, and this CV is not the ideal one. So there's a lot of material now available online to help you. There are experts sitting on different blogs, YouTube channels. There are different sites that can guide you. Uh, Self-learning is extremely important, and how to improve and go about it. So I think that's something I would really emphasize
Yeah.
on doing it. That's the first thing that gets you to that table,
Yeah.
because once you get to that table, this is who you are. Now you are practically explaining who you are and
Yeah.
why should the other person be hiring you.
That's very fascinating. Um, the next part I want us to talk about is, I think we sit from the part of the youth or young people trying to get into roles, and a lot of the time we try and speculate what job seekers are looking for. You have mentioned looking at job requirements and reading through them. Some people tend to say, look, job requirements, they are just standard. They don't really give us enough information about what the employers are looking for. And also, there's this thing I noticed, that sometimes you have a standard CV, but then you need to adapt it to fit every job description that you are applying for. Maybe your experiences from, let's say my experience from boat operations could match some experience, not necessarily an operations role, but for a different role. But I need to read through the job descriptions and adjust my CV to it, and I'm so lazy to do that. So a lot of people just end up applying jobs with one general CV, regardless of the role that it is. How should people approach trying to understand what employers are looking for, and are job descriptions enough to give us this information?
Look, there are. It's not easy.
Yeah.
I'll be. There is one way where I can be a very motivational speaker, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you, no, you have to do jobs CV according to every job.
Yeah.
And then there's a realistic me,
Yeah.
where I probably will say that, okay, do I have the time
Yeah.
to mold every CV
Yeah.
for every single job?
Yeah.
Unless somebody tells me that, okay, you need to do this thing, and then I'm calling you up for an interview.
Yeah, that's true.
But let's say if you're applying on any job portal, on any website, or even LinkedIn jobs, or any other place, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
As much as you try to do it, but then what you can do is, maybe if, let's say, you want to work in 2-3 field, maybe you spend some time in creating a CV that has some high level requirement for particular roles. And for example, let's say sales will always be sales.
Yeah.
You're selling one product or you're selling a service,
Yeah.
and some basic things will always be there. Some basic sales trait will always be there in your personality,
Yeah.
that are in as part of your innate nature, as to how you work and what's your uh, way of selling and stuff. But
Yeah.
there are certain things which are different. So some are your achievements, some of your experience. So maybe you can create some sort of a generic one for, let's say, all sales job, and then
Okay.
use that CV for applying to those jobs. If
Okay.
you're looking for a customer service job, you highlight and you try to make such a generic one which can cut across multiple industries. That, okay,
Yeah.
as a customer service agent. Either you could be a front end customer service, or you could be a back end customer service person working in a call center, or you working on chats. There could be, but then again, what are your achievements?
Yeah.
So I probably would be interested in knowing, okay, as a customer service, this is what you do, but what have you done in your roles? That also matters.
Yeah. So I think all this we've been talking about how to get into like a corporate structure, how to get into the working environment. But a lot of us also have the opportunity to get in there and find ourselves stuck at where we entered at. So it's more like there are lots of people who are stuck at entry roles. They find it very difficult to move up the corporate structure. And I mean, like you said, it's very competitive. Getting into the corporate structure is very competitive. But I think within the corporate structure is even sometimes way more competitive than you trying to get in, because in there, the movement above you is very limited. And so you need to be very, very ambitious, or sometimes very, very efficient as well, in order to rise up through the corporate ranks. Now, you, as you said, over the course of 17 years, have had different levels of growth, different movements up the ladder, and now you are managing a very huge team, very impactful team as well. How should young professionals within the corporate structure approach growth?
So one of the thing which is where we need to understand is patience. You need to be patient, right? There are two ways to grow in your professional career. A, you grow within the organization. B, you switch and then you grow. There are different approaches. Some people would like to continue working for an organization for a certain period of time and then they grow. And some people would want to switch to different organization and then they start growing up the ladder. It's everyone's personal choice. Because it starts from where you are. If you're part of a very good organization. So for example, I spent almost 11 years with my first employer. 11 years is a big,
Yes, it's a
right?
very long time.
But if I look at every single role that I did, only the first two roles were less than a year long. The remaining roles were 2 years, 3 years, almost at least 3 years on an average. So when you're growing in an organization, you need to be, first thing, you need to be patient. Look, I could be wrong but I'll give my own example and experience. The first year, when you get into an organization, the first 6 months is just you're learning, right? And the next 6 months is where what you've learned, you're implementing. So now in the first year is gone, you have learned and you have implemented what you have learned. The second year is where you are actually making significant difference, because now you know what to do, and then you say, no, I need to improve these things. I need to improve processes, because now I know and I understand the challenges. Now I understand our customers too, and now I need to start growing in the second year. So the way I see it, second year is very critical, because now you're impacting major things. Some people have the opportunity when they get into a role, they start impacting from because if your learning period is small, within a couple of months. But realistically speaking, it takes time. Unless you were working in one role in the same company, then you joined another company, quite similar business, in another role, that's where your learning period is short and you start impacting quickly. And then it also affects on the at the age of the organization. If your organization is very young, you can start impacting huge things. But if your organization is quite mature, then of course it'll take time. So it's a once you get into an organization, just like you said, getting into an organization is tough. But then once you're in the organization, it's also difficult to compete, because you can be a part of the team who has 10 members, pretty much 10 people are doing quite a similar kind of jobs that you're doing. What is going to set you apart from those 10 people? So that's where we go back to the heart's soft skills and the skill set that you know that is going to set you apart from others. So I think it's not that simple. Some people, they get into role within a year, they're looking for growth. And again, it it depends on so many factors. You could be a very good, extremely efficient worker, but your behavior is bad. If your behavior is bad, if your work ethics are bad, if you're not available when you people need you, if you're not punctual, these are small little things, but they matter a lot. So that's where you need to be take up your game every single day to make sure that you're growing up the ladder. If you're not growing within your team, there are other opportunities that you can see that, okay, if let's say I'm working in one part of the organization, can I switch into another role as well? Because just like when you start going up, the opportunities they shrink. So when you junior level, there could be like 10 team members, but then there will be like 1 to 2 people managing those 10. And when starts going up, the roles and the opportunities they start shrinking. But that doesn't mean that you should not be hungry for growth. You should always be hungry, where you're looking at different teams, different roles, see what you can do, and where you can learn. And if you're getting into that comfort zone, always speak out and talk to your line managers. At times I see people in organizations who don't like raising up their concerns with their line managers, what they're feeling, if they're going through some stress. They feel like, okay, I would just do everything on my own. It's always good to open up and talk to your management team members that what to do. This is where I am. Maybe they can, at least if you're not going to open up to them, they would never know what's going on in your heart, right? So I think these things are part of your journey.
There's one thing you've mentioned which is very fascinating about the amount of time it takes for you to impact the corporation, to have impact within the corporation. So you have a period of learning, you have a period of implementation, and then you start making significant difference. Does that in any way influence the hiring decision itself?
I would say it plays a role, but it's not something which is the definite one. You can have, let's say, 16 members who are doing the same things, but all these 6 people can be very mediocre performer, right? So that can happen. That happens in organization. There are, when you're dealing with people, you get to know that, okay, these people are working, but still they need a lot of push. And maybe that push is coming from their manager who is driving those 6 people. Otherwise, if that manager moves out or steps away for some days, the department may collapse. So it does play, but again, it's not the only decision making process which is involved, because you're just not keeping. If I start thinking about that, okay, I need to promote this person regardless of how he's performing. A lot of organizations now have a stakeholder engagement process as part of their interview process. One reason could be where I am taking feedback from my stakeholders who you regularly work with, and simply ask them, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think about it? And that, I think, adds a lot of value into the decision making, because my decision could be wrong. Maybe at that point in time, I realized that's the best decision I'm taking, but maybe 6 months down the lane, I realized, no, I made a mistake. I should not have done that decision. But when you have a stakeholder interview around, when you have other peers taking that interview to promote someone, that also helps. Even when hiring as well, now one of the practices that we do, we always try to have a couple of rounds of interviews, so that if my feedback is X, what's the other person's feedback is? If they're also giving the same amount of feedback, their feedback is relevant. Do they see the same traits that I have seen? Then it helps your decision making much easier. And then you're having different perspectives. So you can't really say that, okay, if you've checked 1 to 2 things, that's good.
Yeah.
It's a combination of different things which happen.
Back to growing within corporations. A lot of us are ambitious, but I don't think we understand what we need to do to grow, as in what skill sets do we need? What do we need to start learning about more? Because like you said, growing is like, it's a thing that everyone would desire, but I also think that the responsibilities when you are growing within a corporate structure significantly increases. What would you say are the most fundamental skill sets that people who are looking to grow within a corporate structure should start learning and should start picking up?
Look, if we talk about initiatives or what kind of things or skill set it varies from department to department. Tech teams, ops team, marketing team, finance team, PR team, public policy teams, or any sales team. They have different skill set. You can't really, but yeah, what you need to do is you need to make sure that when you're working in an organization, you a first of all you set clear goals for yourself. What do you want to achieve? That's something which is there. If you're pursuing something, what do you need to develop? Talk to your managers, take your feedback. People and culture team within an organization, we have learning and development team who are sitting out there now. The world has changed. There's everything is available online. There's everything available on internal portal of organizations who are who provides you enough material to develop yourself. Learn these skills. Take out time that okay, I'm developing my soft skills. I'm developing my core skills that I'm working on. I am going now. I will start understanding, and I will start thinking business from my senior's perspective. If let's say, for example, um, we send out, let's say, as part of board, one of our processes that anytime we bring a restaurant on board, we send them a tablet. And if I'm working on, my role is just to make sure that these tablets are going to the restaurants and they're working. My next step would be that understand how these tablets are brought into the office. That's one aspect. How these tablets operations and systems are being developed. That's another aspect. That who is working. So say I start thinking about these things. Okay, this is something, a software is there. How do they continuously improve it? Oh, this is something that recent launch. They have made these features into the app. Why have I not thought about these things? Have you taken initiative of taking this feedback, or your even own your own pain? That okay, when I let's say set up a tablet, this is a problem that I go through. How can I improve it? So I start thinking about a solution, and then I reach out to product team and say, this is my problem, or this is the problem that we face. It takes X number of minutes to do these things. If we do Y, this will bring our turnaround time from, let's say, 30 minutes to maybe 17 minutes. So essentially, you're saving 13 minutes on every single tablet, which means that if you're setting up 1,000th tablet, you're saving a lot of time. And time is money. So that's where you start impacting. So what are the initiatives that you are taking? Again, are you taking feedback? Take constant feedback from your managers. Ideally, I as an individual, I love having my one-on-ones with and that's a religious one-on-one with your team members, where you're sitting with them, understanding what's going on. Is there anything that you can do to improve their or solve their problem as a leader? Similarly, have regular check-in with your line managers, have regular check-in with your stakeholders too, and seek their guidance as to what do they think. Understand company culture too, as to how your organization works, so that you know these are certain things which you value. But at the end of the day, be patient. These things will come, growth will come your way, but then you have to refine yourself to move up that ladder.
One challenge that people have always mentioned is managing people, that within corporations and managing people, I've come to view it not just from the perspective of, let's say, a manager who is managing a group of people, but even from a co-worker point of view. You work with different sets of people. You need to know how to relate with those people differently. Probably because the way in which you work with person A would be different from the way in which you work with person B, to get the best out of both of them as a person who is working with them. How do you think people should start thinking about people management within the corporate space, and how big of a role is people management really playing in productivity?
I think people management is extremely important. People manage, when you're working in an organization, you have people who are working with you as part of your team. You have people working as your stakeholder. You have, let's say, if you're a people manager, people who are reporting to you, and then you're also reporting to senior management too. So there's always upward, downward, right, left, horizontal, vertical, I would say, communication which is going on. I think one of the most important thing when you're working and dealing with people is communication. If you're clear in your communication, that is something where, because think of it as this way, that as let's say a manager of any stream, you had a meeting with someone, they shared the expectation, the changes which are coming your way with you. Now you have to go and explain those challenges with your team. So if you're not clear in your communication, that change management will not work. That change management cycle will break. So you need to have very clear communication, even in your verbal or written communication, so that people don't get confused. And now a lot of communication with an organization is happening on tools like Slack or Skype or any other tools people use within their organization to communicate. When you're writing a message, that's different from the way you explain a message. So you need to also understand the importance of the communication. I think when you're managing people or you're working with people, you need to establish that trust. Building that trust is extremely important, so that they start relying you, they start trusting you, that if I'll tell this thing to someone, or if I ask him to get the job done, he will get the job done, or she will get the job done. So you need to understand that having that trust is also very important. Be empathetic, because you're dealing with people. You may come across your fellow colleague, maybe she's having a really bad day, and which is affecting her work, and you need to understand what's going on. Is she going, or is he going through some mental trauma which is affecting his or her going through in their personal life, which is affecting their professional life. See how you can understand and help. You may ask them to go back home, take a day off, take a 2-day off, or take a week off, so that they can relax and they can at least handle the pressure which is affecting the other thing. So you need to be very empathetic with people, understand what they also go through, because you cannot just have that stick. Yeah, you will get the job done if you're just carrying that stick, but you probably will not get the quality of work, because at the end of the day, I strongly believe in empowerment, empowering your people, right? If you empower, that's how you start showing the other person that you are trusting me. And when you start trusting people, they will do wonders for you. Often at times we underestimate the power of what an individual can do, or we think, oh, will he or she be able to lead a team, or will he or she be able to do it? But then once you give that person a task, they may come back and they may surprise you, because you've given them some direction, and then you've empowered the person to take decisions on their own. And if they do it, then at least it goes a long way. So empowerment is also something which helps people when you're working with them. And I think there are other things as well, but I think once you get to these things, and then recognition and motivation. How do you motivate someone? How do you recognize your people who are working? That's also very important in making sure that you're dealing with people. There was this very old saying, and because maybe I've been working for a longer time, I still refer you to something which I learned maybe 15, 16 years back. A pat on the back can go a long way. If someone would come and tell me, Ali, you're doing a very good job, keep it up. Maybe that pat will make my day. That day I probably, wow, somebody has recognized what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So always making sure that you recognize your team, you motivate them, you achieve with their achievement, you celebrate their achievements, that okay, we have achieved this thing, let's go out and celebrate. That's also very important, that okay. And then at times when you're working with people, you need to make sure that you're also looking at giving them some breather from work. So go out for away days, go out for cultural event, go out for any event. Maybe it could be a Friday evening out with the team, and let them enjoy. So that's where, it's when you're working with people, when you're working with people under you, working with your stakeholders, everything. These are all the things that matters a lot.
I mean, one final question. I think what you've started talking about leads very nicely into workplace culture, as to how you set the tone and the environment within which people work. I know that also, I don't know whether this was different for you when you started working as well, but for a lot of entry roles or people at the lower end of the corporate structure, they tend to look to the higher hierarchy with some sort of disdain in their eyes to say, no, the hierarchy don't care about us. They really don't think that we matter. They are only there for their own good, and all they care about is outputs and KPIs and all that. And I don't know, but my experience might be different because the way in which I've tried to work is not just have a professional relationship with people I work with, but also get to know their personal side because it's more like working for a friend. If you are working with a friend, no matter the demands of the work, you seem to be happy in the work that you're doing. But if you seem to be working for a boss where everything is strictly instruction output, people tend to get tired very quickly and say, I don't think this person cares about me. I don't think this person does that for me. You having gone through those stages as well, and now in management, did you hold that view back then? Do you think that there's a reason why those views tend to be contained at the bottom end of the corporate structure?
I think we need to understand that it's business,
Yeah.
right? If that's the first thing.
Yeah.
We're not there to make friends. We're not there to keep everyone happy. That's not possible, practically speaking. Yeah, I can say a lot of good things about, okay, this is what you do, keep people happy and all that, but it's not possible because there are certain decisions that people have to take. And I always tell people that, get into my shoe and then think of it how you would decide, how
Yeah.
you would take a decision.
Yeah.
And once you start, and what happens usually is when you're working at an entry level role or you're starting off with your career, your scope is limited because you need to understand how certain things will affect.
Yeah.
But once you start growing up, once you start getting into a bigger role, and you start understanding that, okay, my one decision will have an impact on 5 other business component too.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, everyone at their level is trying to take the best decision for the business continuity, because if the business is going to flourish, if the business is going to grow, only then we can make sure that our people are also growing. If your business is not growing, then growth becomes a question mark. Then we get to a point where people start thinking, oh, should we be laying off people because business is struggling? But if your business is growing, and there are times when you'll have to take tough decisions, no matter how many times you want to avoid it, it will come into your lap that you have to take a tough decision. For example, in my organization previously during COVID days, we had to let go of people. While sitting in that conversation, it was extremely difficult. It was one of the toughest things that maybe I had to do when we knew that what we are going to tell people, it's going to break them. But we have a choice at that point in time, because we also had to think about if all those people, everyone, we carry with them along with the way organization is going and the way things are changing, everything is dropping down. Do we have enough money so that we can continue running these things? But that was very difficult. So yeah, not every decision will make everyone happy. That's something we need to whether at times people like it or not, it happens. It happens in the organization. But I think everyone is trying to improve the business so that people who are working, they also start growing.
Finally, on workplace culture, I think it's become a big thing in the business world now, where a lot of people talk about the workplace culture, but a lot of people also quite can't tell what is it, because you don't go to a workplace and then they give you a cultural document to say, yeah, this is our culture. But it seems to be so important that it's become very topical, and it's become very important for people who are even looking for jobs, because they want to know the culture within the work environment that they would most likely want to work in. And so what is work culture to begin with, and how should people go around building the most optimal workplace cultures in their institutions?
I think work culture is because you're spending 8 hours, or at least at a part of your 30% of your day gets to spend at work. If you're working from office, or even if you're working for any company, 8 hours of your day, almost 30% is spent within an organization. Culture is extremely important. If you don't have a good culture, within your organization, it makes it extremely difficult for people to stay there, to even motivate themselves. Self motivation comes within. If people are recommending others, they recommend you based on the culture. So culture is some organizations have really bad work ethics, work culture, toxic. They get to the level of toxicity where people don't feel like getting up to going to work. Culture is a combination of so many things. You cannot say that this is why the culture. It starts from management. They need to trickle down, lead by example, what they need to do. Trust and transparency is one example, that if I'm trusting you and being transparent with you as to how, let's say, the business is going, there are organizations where you know the the company result, how the company is performing, you are aware of it. And that's where you start building that trust, because you're being transparent with your organization, showing people that this is what, that's culture. Respect is a no-brainer. Without respect giving, I mean, even if there's a security guard working in your office who's making sure that you're secure while you're working, that person also deserves respect. Your cleaners there deserve respect. You cannot say, because they're working, it's their job, they are working, they deserve the respect. So respect is the bottom line for, I think, for everyone, regardless of their level. And some people, when they get to a point, they start disrespecting, or they start treating the people who are working or doing these blue collar jobs in a very bad way. That's something which should not happen. Because if you ask someone, how are you? Maybe to a security guard, good morning, how are you? You probably will make his day, because he'll saying, oh, company top manager asked me this question. Oh, wow. So he will be the first, because if let's say he's securing your building where customers are coming in, if the guy feels good about his job, probably he will portray the first impression of your organization. So I think respect is there. Inclusion, diversity, I mean, that's something, inclusion. So we focus a lot on diversity and inclusion. That's also something where we are including people regardless of their background, their where they are from, or anything, their preferences about anything. So that's something which is also part of your culture. I think crystal clear communication is something which is also there. The more clear you are, because it's all in organizations, it's always about communication. If you're good with communication, then it gives a very good culture that, okay, for example, if you're implementing a change in your organization, and if your communication is not clear, if you have not involved the right set, the stakeholders, if you're not involved the right set of people who needs to know and why, then you would not see a good work culture, because people will say they will just come and tell you, we're done, this is how things will do. But if you understand, then it will improve. I think empowerment, like I talked about, it's very important as well. Work-life balance. Now with a lot of organizations, post-COVID, now they have adopted a hybrid model where they work from home and they work from office both. That's also very important now, because people have started to realize that we don't need to be in office throughout the day for 5 days a week to get the job done. We can be sitting anywhere and going on with the job, because now especially if you're working in tech industry, or the way there is some technology involved where you can connect. But if there's some sort of work which is highly where the business requires you to be in place, then you can't expect that. But then work-life balance is also very important too. I think recognition and appreciation of your staff members is very important, where you recognize their effort, because at the end of the day, I as a leader can direct my people that, okay, this is what you can do. But when they are the one running the show, they need that kind of appreciation, acknowledgement, recognition side, that, okay, these are the ones who are actually delivering the results. So that's something which I think is very. And then I think last two things would be opportunities to growth. That if you have enough opportunity to grow within, because that's where people look for, and that's where you also mentioned, we talked about earlier, that growing within an organization, if there are no opportunities within the organization, then of course people will start feeling that, okay, there is something which is not right, or we are not growing, and then affects culture because the negativity will start growing. And I think last but not the least, right compensation.
Okay.
And comp and ben is extremely important.
Yeah.
Because look, if we are not paying the right salaries, the right benefits which every person needs, regardless of whatever we do, at the end of the day, if you're not making the right amount of money which is going to help you run your own life, you would not prefer a culture where we just appreciating you and acknowledging you and doing all these things, but we are not paying you the right. You will always be. But if right comp and ben, I'm not saying that pay an amount of money which nobody pays or be the top of the line employed, but you can always be paying the right market salaries. So if the right comp and ben is in place, I think that helps people to stay, and that's also becomes a company culture part of the so there are like multiple things. You cannot pinpoint that because one thing is very good, so company culture. It's a combination, and then as management, as managers, you will need to continue focusing on these things every in and out day, so that you live up to that culture. You have to, and then you need to keep that culture alive, and you can't do one day activity and think about it as this is going to go on.
It's been a really nice conversation, Ali. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Any final words you want to tell us, the young people who are young professionals, but also people who are trying to enter the professional space?
I think my advice to the young people would be if you're working, and even if you're not working, once you get into your comfort zone, that's the biggest harmful thing that you'll do to yourself. Even if you're working, you feel that okay, I have time, start learning something different. Don't get into that comfort zone that okay, I have a job where I can go from 9 to 5, then I go back home, and in 9 to 5 I don't really have to work anything. Look at it from a bigger picture. Continuously learn. Learning should never stop. That's something which is always there for every single role, because the world is evolving every single day. There's so many things which are happening in the world right now that even we are not aware of. And like say yesterday I saw a video of a girl in China who ordered a self-driving car, and she was roaming around, and although there was someone sitting with her and making the video, but I realized that when in 80s or I think in 80s when we were kids, there was this movie or series called Knight Rider, where the hero would speak to the car using his phone, and the car was self-driven. It will come to wherever he asked her to come. And we used to think that, oh, that's not possible. That's not possible. Now we have phones. We are connected using the devices. Now we have cars which are self-driven. So learning should not stop. This is going to evolve. And I think that hunger within yourself will lead you to places. Don't get settled. If you have to travel to get a new job, do that. If you have to go out of places, do that. Take risks, calculated risk, I would say. Not like a risk where you have not done any home calculation. But if you think, this risk is a worth taking risk, do that, take it. And at least this is where the worst is that if you'll take a risk, you'll do something new, you will fail. Don't be hesitant of failing. You'll fail, you will learn something from it. And we all go through failures in our personal life, in our professional life. That's something which is very normal with everyone. So don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of challenging the status quo. So I think these are like few things I would tell people to focus on.
Thank you.
And I wish everyone all the best.
Thank you so much. This has been a nice conversation with Ali Zaryab, General Manager who works with Boats Ghana. He's been an amazing boss to me several times. I still reach out to him for advice, for assistance on multiple occasions. And it's been a really wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot myself, and I hope that you, our viewers, have also learned a lot. Leave your likes, your comments, your thoughts on some of the things we've discussed as well. See you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.